The first person is Meredith Flanders.
All right, you guys can hear me? Perfect. I got married at the age of 19 to the person who introduced me to crystal meth. The anti-drug programs in school always taught us to be wary of alcohol and that pot will make you brain dead and will ruin your life forever. But much like truth and fact, crystal meth was left out of our teachings in our suburban white neighborhoods. When I was 18, I moved out of my parents' house and into a studio apartment with my 20-year-old boyfriend. It was perfect. We worked the same job, we had the same hobbies. We both had this desire to be on our own, but together. About a month into that new living arrangement, he had a confession to make. He wanted to share something with me. There was a reason he could work 12-hour days and had all the time and energy to draw and go to the gym. Shit, that's what he called it. It was inexpensive, and if you only used it on the weekends and as a means to get things done and be productive, well, then you weren't an addict. He was always good at finding loopholes. I'd never heard of meth before, and the person who I loved and I trusted wanted to share this with me. And I wanted to be open-minded, so I gave it a try. And I remember the first time with that glass pipe pressed to my lips and watching the bowl at the end fill with a wispy white smoke. And I inhaled, and my mouth filled with the most amazing flavor imaginable. And I exhaled, and my head felt tingles, and those tingles moved down my spine. And immediately I felt productive. I felt horny. I felt on top of the world. But the thing, though, is that it messes with your mind, and you don't realize how fast your mind will unravel. I immediately thought that I could use this for the rest of my life as a way to help balance out my career and my personal life. I was easily convinced that if I did this forever, that I would actually be a good mom to my future children. Like I said, it makes you crazy. But I also saw how quickly it dragged me down that rabbit hole. I used about 4 more times until I got caught by the cops. We were at a sobriety checkpoint. We were pulled over. We were only a little high. And all we had in our possession was a dirty pipe. I was honest and I was upfront with the cops, so they let me go home while they took him to jail, which was the longest night of my life. I was paranoid that the cops were sitting outside my door, listening in as I cried to the bail's bondman. I begged and I pleaded, and I promised I would never touch it again. And the next day, I cleared out my savings account, and I paid his bail, and we started off our lives again, drug-free this time. About 2 months later, he proposed, and not long after that did we have our backslide. But this time it wasn't for fun. This time it was to fill a need. I was working overtime, I was planning a wedding, I was trying to prove that I could be a good housewife. We were unhappy. And that's when we called it quits, but this time I meant it. We did get married, and not long after that did the ghost of addiction call him back. He couldn't hide it from me, though. Because the thing about being an addict is that you can spot the other addicts. You know their patterns. You see through their lies. And after several broken promises, I made an ultimatum. I said, touch meth ever again, and I'm leaving you. The problem with ultimatums, though, is that they never work. Because he never touched meth again, but he held his loss against me. It was my fault that he got fat because I wouldn't let him do drugs. But it was also my fault that he couldn't write any more music. It was my fault that he couldn't draw. It was my fault that the house was a mess, and it was my fault that he was unhappy. So after 2.5 years of marriage, I walked away. I told him and my family that it was my fault, a lie that I could easily use so I can escape and start fresh. It's been 6 years since I've used, and even the thought of it now, it makes me nauseous. And I'm not gonna lie, I still ride that roller coaster of desire. Sometimes I even think about who I can call for an 8-ball, but I never follow through. My pride and my future won't allow me to. Thank you.